listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee, a show about... Wait, repartee? Is that a word? Is that what I was supposed to say?
Oh,
the heck is repartee?
It's a word, my man. It's a word. It's banter.
All right, you're listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee. Whatever. Hosted by Doug Paget, Brett Johnson, and Hunter Hawes.
Yeah, coming to you from the fine Twin Cities. And today, for me, from Marco Island, Florida, down by Fort Myers, a place where a lot of Minnesotans vacation, by the way. Where I'm down here in southern Florida, over on the west side of the state. Everything is lovely in this weather, in the sense of weather down here. I'm telling you.
You know what the high is today here in Minnesota?
Yeah, tell me, because I should feel bad.
-1.
-1. It's not even a degree. There's no temperature. It's negative. You have to give back heat. That's what that means. There's zero heat. You have to give it back. Well, I do feel badly some days. I travel sometimes for work, and I'm down here plotting and scheming how to take over the religious people's minds to get them to care about progressive causes. That's what we're doing down here. That's what I'm doing down here, and that's sort of what we're doing on the radio too. Doing what we can to try to get people to think about progressive ideas. Hey, did you hear? Speaking of this, by the way, that Speaker Pelosi, who's doing a great job, for the last 25 years has regularly been quoting a Bible verse to people that turns out is not a Bible verse. Did you see that?
Oh, really? No.
So she stumbled on it. She's like, it was like, hey, you got to care for the earth and you got to care for people. That's what it means to be a person, who cares about God, this kind of thing. It's like been her go-to verse. And she said, well, it turns out, the sentiment is there, but not the actual words. So it's one of the things that religious people say often about Democrats, and it doesn't need to be that way. That people who are religiously minded can have a place inside of progressive politics. That shouldn't be a dead turnaway, and that's one of just the fun little stories about Nancy Pelosi. So I'm going to give her that clap that she gave to Trump the other day. So I've got my hands sitting out, giving her that little
the alligator clap.
Alligator clap, the little grabber. Hey, it's Friday, so that means a couple of things are regulars here on the repartee. We're going to do some news quiz. So that's coming up, and it might include Hunter Haas, but he may move off to other things, and we'd have Eric in. So we're doing live radio where people are going to be swapping in and out.
Musical chairs.
I love it. It's what you do. We're really living on the edge. We're daring people here on the repartee. And we're also going to have the astrophysicist Paul Wallace is going to be on today, and I'm going to ask him what he thinks about Donald Trump giving a little shout out to the astronauts of Apollo 11 in the State of the Union. So at least the President of the United States, in his ramblings on Tuesday night, was willing to give a shout out to people going to space. So we talk about that regularly around here. Maybe we should ask the president to come on the show and answer some questions from the astrophysicist Paul Wallace. Hey, in fact, Hunter, while we're doing this, maybe you could tweet to at real Donald Trump and see if he's available to hop on. Apparently, if you're just like a rando on Fox, you can have the president on at any point. So I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it actually works that we could have the president on someday and say, hey, I've got a couple of questions for you about how this whole thing goes down. Hey, Hunter, did you turn your eyes to the New Deal, the Green New Deal, calling out
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how are you feeling about it? Do you feel like it's captured the way you would like to think about a?
Well, I think it's very important to at least introduce this into the public dialogue, get it in the mainstream media, and get people talking about this, and also clear up. There's kind of a misconception about this that it's only focused on like removing fossil fuels, but focus on the public works aspect of this bill, because I think that is a phenomenal portion and really important to win back some of these rural counties and cities across the country to be able to give them union-paying, living wage-paying jobs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it could, it has all the marks of idealism in it. I don't know if you've read the news accounts, or I actually looked at the actual House resolution today, and it has all the marks of the kind of thing that people who are idealistic talk about when they talk about the environment. Right? It's zero carbon, a neutral carbon imprint on the planet, which is going to be extremely hard to get to, and great paying jobs and all that. And I think you're right that if Democrats and people who care about the environments, even Republicans who care about the environments, would say, look, we have a lot of work to do to create a more comprehensive food source, more comprehensive energy sources, more comprehensive city planning. All of those things are really going to take all we've got. It takes a lot of work to solve 150 years of industrialization's damage to the planet. And if that could be talked about in ways of innovation and new creation and new jobs and the work that has to happen and people working differently, not just working harder, all of that, I think it could really catch on. And I actually think that rural America is the place to put the center of the bullseye on convincing people for this green revolution. If you don't know what we're talking about, AOC and some other, a senator, I can't remember who now. I should look back at the...
Markley?
Markley, yeah, thank you. Yeah, excellent. Good pull there, my friend. Already got that in front of mine. Markley, yes, they pulled together a bill, essentially, and they're trying to push it through Congress. Now, I read an article on Fox News today, which I normally stay away from because it's just nothing but fear-mongering and falsehoods. But it came up in the news feed, that my Apple news feed, and it was saying that the people who are going to be touting this Green New Deal are going to be Republicans, because this opinion writer said because Republicans are going to be all over mocking this thing, that they're going to do everything that they can to be sure that people believe that what Democrats want to do is this Green New Deal with all of its idealism and its pie in the skyism and all the rest of it. And I just hope against hope that that's the case. Because if Democrats could have an argument with Republicans about where our aspirations and where our work and where our goals ought to be set, it's on that. I mean, that would be great. If they truly want to pick a fight with public opinion around issues of how we're going to protect the environment and how we're going to protect future generations' ability to engage in the planet, if they really want to try to mock that, oh man, I think that is right in the access point for Democrats. But Democrats and progressives alike have to get serious about really being able to talk about these things, Hunter, as you just said, as a full part of the entire system. And it's got to trickle through all the way into local politics and state politics, and people really do have to take it seriously.
Absolutely. And I talked about that yesterday, too, which I was very encouraged to see that Tim Walz was in Washington yesterday, and he met up with AOC. So I'm hoping to see Tim Walz lead from the state level and how Minnesota can be a leader with the Green New Deal. Because the original New Deal, it was from the federal government, but there was also a huge contributing factor from Minnesota specifically at the state level of getting New Deal initiatives through. So I'd like to see that same parallel going on today with our new Green New Deal.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have to lean into something. Like if you take the New Deal as an example, you have to lean into that for generations and know that people are going to be resisting you for decades, right? People are still squawking about Social Security, right? They still complain about who gets to receive Medicare. They still complain about the social safety net being too big and too broad and more of a hammock than it is a safety net, right? So the arguments that were afoot in the 1920s and 30s and 40s that brought about the New Deal, they're still being argued, right? So winning the argument doesn't mean that everyone thinks the way you do on it within 5 years or 10 years or maybe even 100 years. But it means that you put those actions into practice. And this is the thing that I worry that any of the kind of more moderate or reasonable Democratic politicians will get nervous about, that they don't want to sound or feel extremist, right? They don't want to act as if the climate is actually a war-like crisis. Because one of the pushbacks that the Republicans have is, boy, if the Democrats want to act like the environment should be responded to like with a war-like footing, where it takes all we've got, we call the entire country into service of this one goal, like in World War II. Then the Democrats are just being foolish if they think they can make it a war. I think it's exactly what we need to do. Say to people, I do too. Like literally 100%. The planets, and it's the damage of the planet is being done by human generated CO2 levels. That is just a fact, and it's a fact that is true, meaning that the data in the fact also has an implication to it, and the implication is we should do something about it. And I got to tell you, you're not going to get there by reducing the amount of people on the planet, and you're not going to get there by reducing the amount of items that people consume. So we're going to have something more grand in the New Deal that actually gets all of innovation, all of technology, all of urban planning, all of social construct into engaged in this, or it's not going to happen. It just really needs to be, and whether or not this particular language inside of this House, I'm trying to get the number, this particular House resolution, which I don't think has a number yet, that this House resolution is the answer. I don't know that it is exactly, but that's how New Deals get started, is you start making a deal with society and with the country. So I hope that all of our presidential candidates too will keep championing it and not champion it and then back away. That's this bit from the repartee. Hey, stick with us. We're going to review the news in that fun little quiz way here after the break on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and Minnesota's progressive repartee.
Hi, this is Chad Larson, owner of AM 950. You are listening to Minnesota Progressive Repartee.
Hi, this is Candy from Green Tea Conversations, Sunday at 10 a.m., and you're listening to the Minnesota Progressive Repartee.
Well, thank you, Candy. That's very sweet of you. See what I did there? I made a candy joke.
Yeah.
Like the poor person doesn't have enough people making jokes about her name. Hey, one of the things I like to do on Fridays is talk to an astrophysicist, and the other thing is to do the news quiz. Hunter, do you like doing this news quiz?
I love the news quiz.
All right, good. Tell me.
I've been pretty good at it.
You have been good. Sure. All right. So we're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have to partner up on this one. This is gonna be a tough one. All right. Question number one, and this is from the Star Tribune's news quiz. If anybody knows other news quizzes we should do on occasion, I'm open to it. All right. So here's the question. I don't know anything about this one either. I didn't see this in the news anywhere. What state proposed a bill to effectively ban smoking by raising the legal minimum age to use cigarettes to 100 years old?
I know it.
You do? The choices are California, Colorado, Hawaii, and Massachusetts. Now, my guess is Hawaii. Is it? Is it Hawaii?
It is.
It seems
like they're trying to raise it to 100 years old, about a decade each year or something.
I love it. Like every year they'll add a decade.
So you'll have to be 20, then 30, then 40, then 50. And when they reach 100, they'll cap it. So if you make it to 100 years old, then you can finally smoke again in Hawaii.
Smoke all you want in Hawaii. That is great. That's been one of my approaches to how we deal with the gun epidemic. If we're not going to have the right fight that we should to say that the Constitution does not allow an individual to carry a weapon, that's all about state militias and about the ability of the state to have its own military and compared to the federal government, which is what the Second Amendment is about. If we continue to say that it's all about people owning guns, then what we ought to do is make ammunition illegal. Right? You can have as many guns as you want. You can have 1,000 guns. You just can't.
Eric's idea was to make all guns pink because then guys wouldn't buy them.
That's awesome. Hey, did you know that pink used to be the blue? Like back in the 20s and 30s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's somewhere, and a marketer switched it with babies from blue to pink. That men boys were given pink things, and somehow that shifted. That pink was the blue of babies.
Wow.
Anyway, so it could become that again. It could become the new camouflage.
Mm-hmm.
All right, question number 2. We got to hurry up. This week, a man was charged for firing 5 shots through Minneapolis school bus windshield along Minneapolis Interstate, seriously wounding a 78-year-old driver. Question is, how many kids were on the bus? But the bigger question is, why do we have 78-year-olds driving our school buses?
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief. Hasn't that guy done enough good for the world? Shouldn't we let the guy, anyway, how many kids were on the school bus? Were there 0? Was there 1? Or were there 5? Or the bus was essentially full?
I believe there was a single girl.
Wow, you've been paying attention, kid. A single girl, yes, and 92% of people got that right. That news story. Oh. But the thing I find interesting about the Star Tribune telling you how many people got it right is it lets you know if a news story has popped above the popped above the norm. All right, we got to hurry up. Who is the designated survivor during President Trump's State of the Union speech on Tuesday? Was it John Roberts, Mike Pence, Elaine Chao, or Rick Perry?
But what's designated? I don't know what that means.
You don't know what the designated survivor? Oh, there's a TV show on ABC that was all about this. But when there's a joint session of Congress, one person is selected and put into a secret location so that if anything happens in that building, God forbid, as they always say, and everyone dies, this person takes over the government. So Kiefer Sutherland was in a show, and he became the president. He's the designated survivor by the Constitution. I happen to know this one. It was Rick Perry.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a problem because when he was running for president, he said he wanted to abolish 3 of the departments, and he couldn't remember which ones they were. So imagine that if he had to become the president, he wouldn't know what he's in charge of.
What he's cutting.
What he's even cutting. All right. What records were broken this week in Super Bowl? I don't even know what that is. 52? Most Super Bowl wins for one player, fewest points in a Super Bowl, the oldest head coach to win a Super Bowl, the longest punt in the Super Bowl, or, I love these, none of the above or all of the above.
I believe it's all the above because I remember 3 of those.
You are right, and only 67% got that right. That makes me feel better. People aren't paying attention to football. The St. Paul City Council appointed its first what this week to fill the seat vacated when Dan Bonstrom retired in December. Did they appoint the first Somali American member, legally blind member, former police officer, Native American member, or all of the above? No, there's no all the above. I just thought that was funny. So Somali American, legally blind, former police, or Native American member. I know this one.
I think it's Somali American.
Somali American. There it is. And only 60% got that right. That's worse than the football details. What famous rapper was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Atlanta this week? Did you know about this story?
This one.
You know this one? Was it Big Boy, spelled B-O-I? Was it Chris Brown? Was it 21 Savage? Or was it Offset?
It was 21 Savage.
Man, we need rapper names, honestly. That just makes me want to have not Chris Brown, but 21 Savage, Offset,
you know
Big
what's
Boy.
Funny? Too, there's also a 22 Savage who came out later and just picked a number up.
I'm going by 20 Savage for the rest of the day. 21 Savage. Hey, we got that one right. And apparently he's like British. Which did you know that was the he came he came as a kid and then he never left. All right, House Democratic women largely wore white to President Trump's State of the Union speech at the Capitol this week. What male legislator also wore white as a sign of solidarity? I didn't know this. I love a white on white outfit. I might do that at the Blue State Ball.
Yeah.
Ooh, should we?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. And when people say, "Well, hi, who are you?" and I'm going to be, I'm 20 Savage,
20
white on white. All right, Colin Peterson, Bernie Sanders, awesome, Mike Levine, or Dean Phillips.
It was my representative, Dean Phillips.
Was it Dean Phillips? I was really hoping it was.
I'll
take it. Mine too, my man. Mine too. How did he look?
He looked like Billy Zane from Titanic.
Hey, then somebody could say at the Blue State Ball, which I hope you all come to on March 2nd, are you being Dean Phillips or are you being 20 Savage, the rapper? All right. What Hall of Fame baseball player who became the first black major league manager died this week at the age of 83? Was it Frank Robinson, Willie Mays, Buck O'Neill, or Bill Lucas? I just heard a story about this, and I can't remember which name it was. I think it's Bill Lucas. Do you have a guess?
No.
Bill Lucas. Let's go with it. Wrong. Frank Robinson. Son of a gun. I need to pay more attention to sports. 2 more questions. Who abruptly resigned as the CEO of Hennepin Healthcare this week? I didn't know this happened. Was it William Haggard, John Pryor, Sheila Riggs, or Thomas Hayes?
It's the only name, I have no idea, but the name John Pryor sticks out.
All right, let's try it. Jon. Hey, correct. 47% got that
Wow.
right. Man, if I hadn't screwed up that last one. All right, last question. Jason Rarick won a closely matched race for Minnesota State Senate seat left open when Tony Laurie resigned to take the job as the state's Human Services Commissioner. What's significant about him? It expanded the Republican majority from 35 to 32. It flipped the seat from a longstanding Democrat. It continues recent gains by Republicans in greater Minnesota. All of the above, none of the above.
Unfortunately, all of the above.
I was just mumbling the same thing. Unfortunately, all of the above. Hey, fantastic there. We got 90%. You know who would have gotten 100%? Astrophysicist Paul Wallace. That's going to be with us here after the break on Minnesota's Progressive Repartee. Hey, welcome back to the Repartee. You know, that music tells you that it's Friday. Just another fun day around here on the Repartee. With our astrophysicist Paul Wallace in today. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hi, Doug. Good.
Great. I'm doing pretty good.
I heard the weather there said the high was 15.
High today, -1.
Really?
Negative. You know you're in trouble.
For you.
You know you're in trouble when your high of the day is a negative. It's like that game kids played at camp, like a high and a low. You're like the kid that Minnesota's like the kid at camp that even when they say, "Well, what was your high of the day?" and they're like, "Well, it was a negative." That's the weather in Minnesota right now. But
wow.
Much like you, my friend, I'm dodging it because I am down here in Marco Island, Florida, just south of Fort.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you're dodging it even more than me.
Yeah.
It's in the mid 40s here, so it's
how pedestrian.
it's a little warmer down there, I bet.
Yeah. It's like 80 and sunny and lovely. Which is just, every once in a while, a spy has to sneak out just to remind the people that the weather gods do not hate you. They're just
that's right.
These
That's
are
right.
things they're doing. Hey, my friend, your industry got a big call out by the person giving the State of the Union.
The person giving the State of the Union. Yes, that person did mention Buzz Aldrin, right?
Yeah, I mentioned Buzz Aldrin. He had him stand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this summer, July 20th, is the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, if you can believe that.
It's actually, I wasn't old enough for it, but it feels like it's been around my entire life because it's been around nearly my entire life. And so I've just taken for granted that the government lies to us that people landed on the moon. So it was good to hear Trump, who is more into conspiracy theories than anyone I think we've ever had in public office, for him to actually acknowledge that Buzz Aldrin stepped on the moon. I'm sure has been a real shock to a lot of people who only follow Donald Trump because of his business about vaccines causing diseases and putting kids on the autism spectrum.
Autism spectrum. Yeah,
right. That.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. He might have lost some fans.
Oh, they must. There's probably something in that whole crazy Q group of people that follow Trump that are like, no, but did you see what he did immediately after that? He turned to the left,
right.
Which was a clue that he had to
maintain.
That was the clue to us that he really does still maintain all of his conspiracy theories. He's a hardcore conspiracy theorist, not just about where Barack Obama was born and about the deep state, but he and Jared Kushner and the whole clan, they're really into helping parents to have the right to not have their children vaccinated against measles and other things.
I did not know. I'm surprised I did not know that, because I mean that's sort of what you think of as kind of a left-wing conspiracy theory, kind of.
Yes.
in my mind.
No, totally. Yeah.
So maybe they exist at that point where the left and the right kind of reach around and meet.
And I think reach around is the great phrase to use there. It's sort of pretty much the the scientific reach around. That's funny. A number of people that I know who are not very political, right? They don't care much about politics, but they care a lot about what would sort of be progressive health causes. But they try to stay clear from the politics, governmental electoral politics side. We're very supportive. So who in every other area of their life you would think these would be totally anti-Trump people. Were very supportive all the way through the election of Donald Trump because his crew sent out the word to all of the religious communities and other communities that they were supportive of believing that autism is caused by vaccines.
Well, at least they're consistent. At least they're consistent with their. I mean, scientists are basically a political pressure group or something.
Yeah.
And so, they're saying all of them are off off their collective rocker. So at least they're consistent that way.
Hey, that's good.
Got to give them that.
That's fine in the yeah. At least you're consistent. It's like when someone is rude to you consistently, you're like, well, the one thing is you are consistent. You're always
Well,
you're always rude.
He really what conspiracy theorists don't like is data. They really don't. And so they've been trying to. One of the stories I want to talk about is the fact that they've been trying to keep this carbon dioxide monitoring satellite from being attached to the ISS, the space station. But it's going up. This rocket has taken what's it called? Orbiting Carbon Observatory 3 is going up. And the Trump administration has tried on several occasions.
That's a fascinating story that NASA has been trying to put this thing up, and that the Trump administration has been trying to limit its ability to get up so we don't read data from the carbon dioxide.
Right, they don't want data. So there's this thing called the Orbiting Orbiting Carbon Observatory 3, and this one is really interesting because there's a carbon observatory that we have orbiting. It's nearing the end of its useful tenure, and they want to replace it. But what they're doing with this one is they're launching it, of course, on a rocket, but they're going to attach it to the side of the space station, which is already in orbit, right? So you don't need all the extra money for the spacecraft itself. All you need is the little machine that measures the carbon on the planet. And the Trump administration has, on a couple of occasions, tried to kill this particular device from going up. And in fact, what they wanted originally was to cut all of NASA's CO2 monitoring.
Until I saw that story,
all CO2 monitoring.
I saw that story, I didn't even know that NASA was in the business of CO2 monitoring from space.
Oh yeah, they've been at it for a long time, and mainly because it's from space. That's what brings NASA into it, is that you can do it so well from space, and so they got to build the vehicles to get them up there.
Do you know how that CO2 monitoring works? What are they? If they're at the space station, I don't know how high it is, but it's still in our atmosphere. Is that right? It's
not super high. No, it's above the atmosphere.
Above the atmosphere.
It's above the atmosphere. I don't know, maybe 800 to 1,000 miles up. So not very high, but well above the atmosphere. And it basically monitors the sunlight being reflected off the planet, and from that, putting it through something called a spectrometer, you can tell about the concentrations of CO2. And it's got a fairly high. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, this is again the Trump administration trying to push against climate scientists. I mean, scientists as a whole, but specifically kind of taking on climate scientists.
Yeah, just trying to shut down the ability for us to monitor very well the level of CO2 in the atmosphere. But what got this particular thing through is that it's so dirt cheap, and such a drop in the bucket of NASA's budget, and it was already well on the way to being, deployed, that you know, it worked its way through the budget process, and it's going to be launched. It's on the way up. I'm not sure. I can't remember when it's going up, but it's going up soon. Is it April?
Yeah,
but it's going up. So we're gonna have climate data continuing to pour in. High quality climate data is going to continue to pour in for the foreseeable future. That's kind of the big point.
And then I guess they'll just argue about all the implications of that, or if they fund the scientists to interpret the data and all the rest of it.
That's right. I'm sure he'll try to find ways to keep that from being known. But you know, that's basically the idea: is that conspiracy theorists don't like data. So
hey, the other thing Trump mentioned in the State of the Union, he had this little line where he said that for the first time in a long time, I can't remember exactly how he said. I'm trying to find this year, American astronauts will go back to space in American rockets. And I got to tell you, I'm not very supportive of Donald Trump, but for years I've been complaining that the United States, that NASA has been outsourcing to Russia and then to private business, the rocket business. And I was like, how come NASA can't be in the rocket business? So this seems like really good news to me. I don't know how much of it had to do with the Trump administration.
The rockets are being built by Boeing and SpaceX. That's the American rockets he's talking about.
Okay.
They're not NASA's rockets.
Oh, holy. See, once the minute I think I'm going to, I give the guy so what he's saying, unbelievable. See, this is where facts.
You try so hard to be fair.
I was like, okay, there's something. This line, and I'm quoting from the text. This year, American astronauts will go back to space in American rockets. And I actually perked up and I thought, good for NASA. But what you're saying is NASA is going to rent space, or they're buying the rockets from NASA, or these are not NASA's rockets?
Yeah, they're renting space on SpaceX's and Boeing's rockets.
He's just a fraud at every living level. I'm telling you. I mean,
and I'm not convinced those are built entirely in America. I imagine that large parts of them are, but I am virtually certain that not all of the parts on those rockets are built in the U.S. of A. I am certain of that.
They're like Trump ties. They're like Trump branded ties. They're going to be so unbelievable. It just. All right. Okay. So enough Donald Trump. Okay. So when we come back, we'll let people give a chance to call and ask an astrophysicist what they want to ask. That phone number is 952-946-6205. And then there's a couple of really fun newsy stories out again, including one of those that has the headline, "What's this weird stuff all over Uranus?" Which again, you know, it's just every headline about Uranus, they find some way to make it 12-year-olds.
Well, they don't. Yeah, and even if they didn't try, it would still be funny.
It would still be funny. All right, so we'll be back here on Minnesota's Progressive Repartee, and give us a call if you want to ask your own question to astrophysicist Paul Wallace, 952-946-6205, and we'll be back after the break.
Hi, this is Laura.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes we get a little confused. In fact, Hunter, are you still there, or do we have the privilege of Eric?
You have the privilege of Eric right now.
Eric, hey, good to hear from you. Yeah, good to hear from you, buddy. And, of course, we're talking to astrophysicist Paul Wallace, so you never know who you're going to get in these kinds of conversations. And I think we have Logan from Eden Prairie on the line with a question for his favorite astrophysicist. Well, I guess I shouldn't be so
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening.
I'm not sure if your field of study is strictly related to this, but I was wondering what you think about the viability of fusion as an alternative energy within the next, 20 years, 30 years?
Well, that's a good question. And I've been asked this question, or I've heard people talk about this question for about 30 years. And every time I hear somebody predict it, they say about 30 years from now. And I've not heard that number decrease any. They're still working on it in a number of labs across the country and the world. But I am not particularly optimistic that it'll be in the next 20 years.
Logan, what's your thought on that? Have you heard about it too? Do you have a hope, or do you have an insight?
I mean, I saw recently some on the news that China had gotten their fusion reactor up to like the highest temperatures ever recorded, and they did point out that they were still a long ways away. But in this climate where I think the sooner we get fully like green energy to fully replace fossil fuels, the sooner the better. But like, what would
I
be?
agree.
I guess my question then, as a follow-up, would be, what would be the green or alternative energy source that you think is the most underdeveloped, or we could use the most right now?
Well, I don't have a really satisfying answer to that, but I will second your unspoken notion that fusion would in fact solve that problem. It would be clean, it would be remarkably efficient, and you would get so much energy out of so little for such a long amount of time. If that can be tapped, then that will solve for any foreseeable future all of our energy problems. But as we see, whenever there's a threat to the industrial sort of complex that we've got providing us energy, there's a significant pushback, and you think it's bad with CO2 in the atmosphere. If people start tapping into fusion, it's going to be a real frenzy for a while.
Paul, explain for those who, like me, who don't know the difference between fusion and other nuclear power plants and so on. Just give a quick distinction about why it's such a game changer and so elusive.
All the nuclear power plants that operate on the planet operate by something called fission, which is when you take a heavy nucleus like uranium or something like that, and you break it down into smaller nuclei. That produces a lot of energy, but also produces a lot of radioactive waste products. Okay, it's what we call a dirty process. Fusion, on the other hand, is what the sun does, and that's when you take small nuclei like hydrogen and build them up into heavier nuclei like helium. There are no byproducts that are dangerous, maybe a little bit of something called tritium, but not very much of it. It's clean. It would run on hydrogen, which is found in water. So basically it would run on water, and it would produce more energy per pound, and it would be completely clean.
And you could have that in other, like you could put that in houses, in cars, and that kind of thing. Like you'd have little fusion.
Eventually, yes, and it'd be safe, because the thing about nuclear power plants as we have them is that you can get what's called a runaway reaction, and you can have all kinds of hazards and disasters occur, like Chernobyl. That cannot happen with fusion. It simply is. There's no mechanism by which fusion can do that, basically.
And as far as you can tell, what is it that makes it so hard that we're still 30 years out, some 30 years into the process?
It's too hot. You can't contain it. But actually, we can make fusion. We can make them in hydrogen bombs. Hydrogen bombs are fusion
okay, there
bombs.
you go. All right, so there you go.
But we can't contain it is the problem. The point is that fusion runs at such high temperatures, millions of degrees Celsius. It runs at such a high temperature, tens of millions really, that no container that we have can hold it without melting. Basically is the problem.
Well, that does seem like a formidable problem. Is this? I remember a few years ago, decades ago, George W. Bush was giving a State of the Union, and he said something about a big commitment to cars driving on hydrogen. Is that the same kind of thing as fusion?
That's fusion. So it would start off as it would start off as huge reactors, but the dream would be that one day we'd be able to have them on your your countertop, basically.
Yeah. Well, hey, Logan, thanks so much for the call, and thanks for the question. We're going to take a minute and go to Don in Maple Grove. Hey, Don, you have a question for the astrophysicist?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. It's an interesting discussion you guys are having with your astrophysicist guest. I was just wondering, the NASA has been doing this carbon analysis. What did you say, 80,000 miles or 80,000 feet above the Earth? How high above is that?
I think it's around, off the top of my head, I think it's about 1,000 miles.
1,000 miles. Okay, now, if I'm trying to explain, I'm just I don't know one way or the other. I want to believe that there's some change going on in the atmosphere because of all the stuff that we're doing. But most people do not pay attention to what's going on 10 feet ahead of them. That's basically how do you get them to understand? Is there an easy way to explain to people that there is man-caused or person-caused thing going on,
Well,
because
that's
the argument they're making with me is, hey, carbon dioxide has been there ever since the Earth was, is in existence. So how do I explain that?
Yeah, and Paul, question. You have to do it in less than 30 seconds because we're going to run into the end of the show.
Yeah, that's the human problem. That's part of the reason why it hasn't gotten the traction that it's gotten, is because you have to have a disaster befall your neighborhood or your backyard or your city before you're going to start to notice. And as soon as Miami starts going underwater, then you'll have people taking action once that really starts happening.
Don, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for the call. Hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Astrophysicist.
Sure.
Hey, have a great weekend, everyone, from your Minnesota Progressive repartee on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.